Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Dear students in grade 9 and prep 3 and our sons abroad, today inshallah I will introduce to you the final revision for A Tale of Two Cities by Charles Dickens. In this video, I will introduce to you the most important questions and the questions that are mostly repeated in the last few exams of the last few years. Let's start with the first question. How did Mr. Lorry comfort Lucy on the wedding? He was telling her that she was leaving her father in as loving hands as hers, and they would take good care of Dr. Manette. Question 2. What happened to Dr. Manette after his daughter's wedding? He was greatly shocked. Darnley must have told him something that had given him a great shock. He lost his mind and memory. He remembered nothing except his old days when he used to work as a shoemaker. He did not remember anything about his present, and he could not recognize his old friend, Mr. Lorry or Miss Pross. Question 3. Oh me, all is lost. What shall I say to my darling Lucy? He doesn't know me, and he's making shoes. Comment. Of course, these words were said by Miss Pross after she had seen Dr. Manette had been relapsed. Miss Pross said these words to Mr. Lorry when Dr. Manette had lost his mind after his daughter's wedding. The doctor remembered nothing about his present. Miss Pross was troubled and did not know what to do or what to say to her ladybird, Lucy. What did Charles tell Lucy about Sydney? What did Lucy beg her husband to do? ماذا ترجت زوجها أن يفعل? Charles told Lucy about his conversation with Carton. He talked about him as a problem of carelessness and recklessness, but Lucy begged him to show some respect and consideration to Sydney, whom she believed to be a miserable creature with a heart full of wounds. قلب مليء بالجراح. Remember how strong we are in our happiness and how weak he is in his misery. Who said this statement to whom? Lucy said that to her husband. Who is that weak on his misery? Of course, she was talking about Sydney Carton. Mention the rest of the request. اذكر بقية الطلب. Lucy said that to her husband when he told her about his conversation with Carton. She believed that Carton was weak in his misery and loneliness. She begged her husband to show some respect and consideration to Carton as his heart was full of wounds. What do the echoing footsteps represent? In England, they represent the people who came and went in the Manette's house. In France, they represent the people who are going to attack the Bastille in France. In England, what do the echoing footsteps represent? صدى وقع الأقدام ماذا كان يمثل? In England, they represent the people who came and went in the Manette's house. In France, they represent the people who are going to attack the Bastille in France. What was the Devarge's wine shop in 1789? It was the headquarters of Jacks who were going to attack the Bastille. كان مركز قيادة للجاكس اللي هيهاجموا بعد كده سجن الباستيل. To what did Dickens compare the people in France? He compared them to the raging sea and waves rising and flowing the city, flowing the city and pondering upon the walls of the Bastille. Speak about the revolution and the place where it began. تحدث عن الثورة وأين بدأت. The revolution began in Saint-Antoine or Saint-Antoine. The center was the wine shop of Monsieur Devarge. The people were all shouting and roaring madly, carrying anything which would serve as a weapon like knives, guns, axes, and iron bars. Monsieur Devarge gave out weapons and orders to the Jacks to gather as many people as possible. They all went to the Bastille and set it on fire. The people rushed inside and set the prisoners free. وأطلقوا سراح السجناء. The soldiers and the guards were killed. How did the revolution continue? كيف استمرت الثورة? The revolution continued as bloody as it began. دموية. The angry people had no mercy because mercy was never shown to them. They hanged nobles on streets, lamps, and burned all prisons and chateaux throughout France. أحرقوا كل السجون والقصور في كل فرنسا. What part did Monsieur and Madame Devarge play at the beginning of the revolution? Devarge was at the head of men who were armed with bars, axes, and sticks, while his wife was at the head of women, and they all walked to the Bastille. Why did the mob attack the Bastille? لماذا كان العامة والغوغاء يهاجمون الباستيل? Because it represented injustice and oppression. كان يمثل عدم العدالة والظلم. They attacked it to free the prisoners who were imprisoned without accusation or trial, to destroy the records which had the names of prisoners, to destroy the instruments of torture, كل أدوات التعذيب, and because Devarge wanted to see the secret cell on 105 North Tower where Dr. Manette was imprisoned. What did Monsieur Devarge do when the Bastille was taken? When the Bastille was taken, Devarge grabbed one of the guards and made him show him the secret cell 105 North Tower. With the help of Jacks 3, they searched the cells carefully, after which he ordered Jacks 3 to pile everything in the middle of the room and set it on fire. وأشعلوا فيها النيران. What did Devarge discover in the secret cell? ماذا اكتشف في الزنزانة? He saw the initials AM. الحروف الأولى AM طبعا تمثل Alexander Manette. On one of the walls inside the chimney, he found some papers which Dr. Manette had hidden from the jailer while he was in prison. بعض الأوراق التي خبأها دكتور مانيت وكان يكتب فيها مذكراته وأخفاها عن السجان. What was written in Gabel's letter? Why was he put in prison? جابيل ده كان الخادم لمستر تشارلز دارني. جابيل begged Charles to come to Paris and help him, as Gabel had served him faithfully. Gabel was put in prison because he was accused of treason, تهم بالخيانة, for serving Darnley, who was considered to be an immigrant. He was going to be sentenced to death. هيحكم عليه بالإعدام. He tried to tell the people that Darnley was on their side and had ordered Gabel not collect taxes, but they would not listen to him. How did Darnley try to discourage Mr. Lorry from going to Paris? هنا كيف دارني حاول أن يثني مستر لوري من الذهاب إلى باريس. He told Mr. Lorry that he was an old man and the journey would be long and tiring for him. He added that Paris at that time was a very, very unsafe place for him. What was the doctor's special power in Paris? سؤال مهم. Because Dr. Manette was an old Bastille prisoner, every patriot in Paris tried to help him or carry him in triumph. This had helped him to get through the French barriers, gave him news of Charles, and he was able to bring Darnley to a trial. يعني نجح إن يضع أو يجيب محاكمة عادلة لتشارلز دارني اللي على أثرها أطلق سراحه لكن قبض عليه مرة أخرى. What happened to Charles as soon as he reached Paris? As soon as Charles reached Paris, he was arrested and summoned in secret to the prison La Force. He defended himself, saying he was a free citizen and came to France to save the life of a good citizen. He asked if he hadn't the right to defend himself, but he was told that immigrants had no rights. المهاجرين ليس لهم حقوق. What did Charles Darnley say when he was called prisoner? عندما دعوه سجين ماذا قال؟ He objected and said that he was a free citizen who came to Paris on his free will, جاء بمحض إرادته, to save the life of a friend, and he introduced Gabel's letter, وقدم الخطاب بتاع جابيل, لكن هذا لم يشفع له. In the name of that sharp female newly born and called La Galotine, why did you come to France? Comment. These words were said by Monsieur Devarge to Charles Darnley while he was taking him to La Force. Monsieur Devarge was upset because before the revolution he prayed God to keep Darnley out of France as his name was registered in the list of Madame Defarge, and for Dr. Manette and Lucy's sake, he wished Darnley to stay out of France. كان يتمنى ألا يحضر تشارلز دارني إلى فرنسا في وقت الثورة، لكن حدث ما لم يتمناه. Other eagles have been similarly buried in worse prisons before now. Comment. These words were said by Monsieur Defarge to Darnley when Charles asked him if he would be buried in La Force without trial. Mr. Defarge was referring to Dr. Manette, who had been buried in a worse prison for 18 years without accusation or trial. بدون محاكمة أو توجيه أي اتهامات له. Thank God that no one near or and dear to me is in this dreadful town tonight. Comment explaining why this statement is ironical. يعني مدعاة إلى السخرية. These words were whispered by Mr. Lorry when he looked out of the window and saw a large grindstone around which a large crowd of patriots gathered, sharpening their knives, swords, and bars. This statement is ironic because all the people whom he loved and cared for were actually in Paris at that time. يعني هو بمجرد ما قال هذه الجملة كان بيدخل عليه دكتور مانيت وبنته جايين من إنجلترا لإنقاذ تشارلز دارwin. What were the principles of the French Revolution? ما هي مبادئ الثورة الفرنسية؟ The principles of the French Revolution were liberty, equality, fraternity, or death. How was Dr. Manet's imprisonment a source of help for Darnley during his difficulty? كيف كان قوة أو سجن دكتور مانيت مصدر قوة له لإخراج تشارلز دارني من السجن. Dr. Manette was a pastoral prisoner. His imprisonment and suffering gave him power in Paris during the revolution. He gained the love and respect of the mob and those in authority. They listened to his story and backed it up. For his sake, they spared Darnley's life. They even appointed him a medical officer of La Force. Thus, he was able to save Darnley from death. And later on, he was able to bring Darnley to a trial. What was the real reason of Madame Defarge's visit to Lucy? السبب الحقيقي لزيارة Madame Defarge للوسي. The real reason was to be able to identify Lucy and her child in order to destroy them because of the decision that had been taken to exterminate the Evermond family to the last of their race. Why wasn't Darnley released after the doctor had spoken to the tribunal? Darnley was not released for his own safety. بحثاً لأمان له. It was decided to remain in custody until he was brought to a fair trial because the angry people were killing all the nobles in the streets. Why did Lucy stand for 2 hours every day in the corner of a dirty, dark street? Who noticed her? كانت بتقف لتأخذ مشاهدة قصيرة لزوجها في السجن. She did so to enable her husband to see her from one of the windows of the prison that overlooked that street. I would swear who had been once the mender of roads noticed her. Do you remember the woodcutter or would swear who had been once the mender of the roads noticed her? Who were the witnesses? How did their witnesses turn the case in his favor? In his favor, the favor of Charles Darnley, of course. The witnesses were Dr. Manette and Gabelle. They both showed the court that Charles was different from the other nobles. He was kind, gentle, and faithful. Dr. Manette also told the court that Charles had once been tried in England as an enemy of England and a spy for France. The witnesses' words turned the case in his favor, as the people were greatly touched by, and all the votes were for him. He was set free. What was Carton's threat to Purcell? Carton's threat to Purcell was that if he did not help him, he would go to the nearest Republican committee and inform them that Purcell was an enemy of the Republic. Why was Darnley arrested for a second time? Darnley was arrested for the second time because he was accused by the people of Saint-Antoine of being an enemy of the Republic and a member of a family guilty of horrible cruelty to the people. The people who accused him were Monsieur and Madame Defarge and somebody they didn't mention in his name. Of course, that man was Dr. Minute. How did Sidney Carton force Purcell to help him? كيف أجبر سيدني كارتر بارسرد على مساعدته في إخراج أو في خطته لإنقاذ تشارلز دارنلي. Sidney Carton told Purcell that he knew that he was a police spy. He knew that he was using a false name. He was in the service of the English government. Sidney threatened Purcell of reporting him to the nearest Republic committee if he did not help him in saving Darnley. The last question of that session: what did Defarge find in the room 105 North Tower? He had found a paper written by Dr. Minute denouncing the Evermont family to the last of their race. Thank you for watching. Thank you for being with me. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and share that video with your friends. Thank you. Till we meet again in the second part of that final revision. Thank you and goodbye.